Welcome to Investories, a podcast about real stories, real estate, and taking real action. Join hosts John Hooper and Kyle Robertson as they talk investing, mindset, and taking that first step. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories Podcast.
Booyah! Welcome to the Investories Podcast. I'm John Hooper. Booyah! Welcome to the Investories Podcast. I am John Hooper, your host, and with me is not Kyle. Kyle is actually off celebrating his birthday. Happy birthday, Kyle. Hope you're enjoying it, and he'll be back next week. So you just got me. But before you turn off, this week we've got Alex Barnett. Alex is a wholesaler, a musician, a fix and flipper, and also now a property owner. And his journey is awesome because they started pretty much at zero 3 years ago and have grown a business from that up to where they are today, owning multiple properties, wholesaling and doing fix and flip deals. And it's a really interesting interview. We talk about his band, Aloha Radio. We talk about working with your spouse and how that works and playing to people's strengths, that kind of stuff. And then also a lot around how you find and connect with motivated sellers and also motivated buyers and kind of fill in that gap. And also stick around because there's some tips and tricks and technologies that will help you do that, and a few bits that I hadn't thought of, texting and that kind of stuff. So super interesting. While I've got you listening to me and listening to my ramblings, please do go and give us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And check us out on YouTube. The link's in the show notes. We'd really like all the views we can get and all the feedback we can get. And if you can share any of our content, then we're super grateful. And why not hit us up on Investories Pod on Instagram and ask us a question. What do you want to hear? What do you want us to cover? Who do you want us to talk to? Without further ado, here's the episode. Welcome to Investories. Alex Barnett. Hey, Alex.
How's it going, John? Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Doing great. Yep, it's Friday. Loving it. Looking forward to the weekend. How about you?
Yeah, good. Same. Can't wait for the weekend. What are your plans? Anything exciting?
I'm going to go to a meetup tomorrow. Pace Morby and Jamil are going to be in LA. So I think we're going to cruise up to that and join the circus that'll probably be.
Is that going to be a lot of people or not? Is it kind of a tight group?
No, they're doing it like on the beach. And I see that it's kind of like getting blown up. I mean, Pace is getting huge. So I think there's going to be a lot of people there on the beach, and they're just doing
Pace is getting. I saw him at BP Con.
Yeah,
and I was like, it was like I'd seen Harry Styles.
Yeah,
like, hey,
exactly.
Pace.
Yeah. He's full rock star status at this point.
Absolutely, he was really friendly and said, "Hey, what's up?" and all that good stuff that he's probably said to a million people that weekend. Right. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's why he's where he's at.
So you alluded to it. Where are you? You're based in what, Orange County?
Yep, I'm in Orange County, right south of Long Beach.
Nice. Okay, yeah. So just up the coast. It's nice to meet people that aren't leaving California.
I know. I think I'm staying. I have a fantasy of leaving, but then I'm also like, I love California, and if we can make it work here, which I do know a lot of investors that are killing it here, regardless of what people say. So there's a lot of opportunity to be had.
I love it. So let's talk about that. So your route to investing, how did that start? Like what was the kind of the gears to getting to where you are today?
Yeah. So it seems like a story that a lot of people had right about 2020 when everything was going down. My wife and I are in a band called Aloha Radio. We were touring full time, writing and recording. And so when live music got shut down, we kind of had to rethink our plans because we always say we were our original plan was to just Willie Nelson it off into the sunset, just play till you're 90 and just be touring.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I never thought the idea of live music shutting down. So I was like, okay, I got to figure something else out. And so I just started reading, a bunch of investor books, and one of them jumped out to me. Rich Dad Poor Dad, kind of went down that rabbit hole. As simple as that book
Ding.
is.
We have a noise for that.
Okay.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. The Rich Dad
Exactly.
Poor Dad ding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the light bulb that goes off, because you're like, wait a second. Yeah, it's so easy, it seems like, and it doesn't dive too far deep into, the next steps. That's up to each person on their journey, but it definitely sets a light bulb off. And so kind of just followed that, went down the real estate hole, and I found a local mentor. And I didn't really have any real estate skills, but I wanted to bring value. So I told him, let me work on your YouTube channel for free, because his YouTube channel was lacking. He's been a flipper here in Orange County for over 40 years. And so I was like, I just want to learn everything. And so I started recording his videos for him and uploading them. And he pretty much taught me like A to Z how to do real estate. He's like, just start wholesaling, which is really just lead generation, how to get leads. And so about 2 months in, I was doing agent outreach. I got a lead over here in Carson. Agent that I had talked to called me up and said, hey, we need a cash buyer for this deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, here it is. And so I ended up selling my first deal to him, made like 15 grand on it. And then they ended up killing it on the flip. And
wow.
Prior to that, that was like the most money I had seen in a long time, just being like a starving artist before that. So I was like, okay, there's something real about this. And so I just got obsessed at that point, started doing virtual wholesaling, local wholesaling, just to learn the ins and outs of a deal. And worked all the way, did that for about the first 15 months. And then January 2022, we started flipping. So my wife and I have done about 4 flips. We did 4 flips last year, and we kind of got into the mobile home niche. And so we love mobile homes, and we love flipping, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So we're starting to keep our own properties via seller finance and subject to as well. So we're just kind of making our way up the ladder.
There's so much to unpack from that. The first question I have to ask, and I think you kind of answered it, which is why that book? Why Rich Dad Poor Dad? Why does that resonate so much?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's a book that I think we've all kind of seen on the periphery. I don't know what it is. Like, I had seen it. I had heard about it. It's in everybody's top 10 list about, just financial literacy and getting your mindset right about, being financially free, what it means, what an asset is versus a liability, which is a fundamental sort of idea that a lot of people get wrong. And so it's just one of those, I don't know what it is, but it just has some sort of a magical element to it that it really spells out to you, hey, it's not that hard. Or I should say it's a pretty simple process. It is hard, but it's simple. So, as long as you kind of get your mind right about what you're trying to achieve, then you can kind of head in that direction.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think because for me, it was the fundamentals, and it was like a reality check. It's like, stop buying stupid shit. Right. And start thinking about how your money can work for you better. Yep. And start asking the question, what are you trying to do here? Like, what does this give you joy by buying something, or, that kind of thing. So I guess I was on the balance between the two, which is kind of interesting when you're in that. So, yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you about your band. Okay. What was the band called? It's called Aloha Radio. Aloha Radio. And what kind of music? It's indie rock reggae is what we call it. We started off as a surf band. We all kind of are inspired by California and Hawaii culture. So we kind of just made a band around that. So we started off as like instrumental kind of surf band music with Lauren, my wife. She's our singer. She plays ukulele, and we've been a band for probably like 10 years with our best friends, and we toured the US, a few countries. It's been an amazing, fun experience. Amazing. We'll put a link in the show notes. You've got to send us the links for those. I want to check that out. Yeah. It sounds right up my street, actually. Surfy, indie, Hawaii. We love San Diego. Exactly. San Diego loves us. We're down there all the time playing. So Oh, well, there you go. We're gonna have to check you out.
Yeah.
That's so that's amazing. I can't wait to listen to that. Maybe we'll put some on the podcast.
Sweet.
So in terms of kind of that pivot and reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then you picked up a mentor, that you kind of skipped over something that should be at top of everyone's list, which is how do you learn from people and how do you kind of start to build out that network? What did that look like in terms of finding that mentor? Was it kind of luck, or did you actively go out and find him or her?
Yeah, it was kind of both. So I think I do the it's like the basic route after talking to people for the last couple of years. It's like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then you find yourself over on Bigger Pockets. So I was watching all the podcasts, watching all the videos, and they keep bringing that up. They're like, you need to find a mentor, like mentor is the biggest thing. And now looking back, I'm like, I should have had a mentor for every single thing I was trying to achieve in life in general. So what I did was, and they also say like, try to bring value to your mentor. So I'm like, okay, what are my skills? It has nothing to do with the real estate, but I do know how to like edit videos. I do know how to like put a YouTube sort of video together. So I was like, all right, let me pitch that to some people. So I kind of just went on Bigger Pockets and tried to find people in my area. And I took a few meetings with a couple guys, and I was just like, hey, I'd like to bring value to your business. One of the guys was kind of getting out of flipping, and he was just going to do like syndication. And he was saying, you should just need to invest out of state. And, if you're really serious about it, you should go move there. Like, you should go move to Nebraska and like just start buying rentals. And I was like, ooh, probably not going to do that, but okay, thanks for the advice. And then I reached out to another guy who was flipping. He was right up here in Seal Beach. And I just was like, hey, I'd like to record videos for you for free. And we kind of went back and forth, but it just never transcribed into anything. I totally get it. He's busy. He's got his business to run. And so nothing ever happened with that. So then I go on Bigger Pockets again and just try to look up Orange County mentor, and this guy Joe Holmes, he pops up and he's like, he's met with like 300 people. He just says like, I'll have lunch with you, and you can ask me whatever you want. He kind of puts himself out there as a mentor. And so at the time he was doing monthly meetups, and these were all on Zoom. And so I joined the meetup and was just kind of sitting there absorbing it, because I know nothing, and when you're first getting into it, it all seems like crazy at first. And he just kind of calls me out, and he's like, hey Alex, like, what do you want to do? Why are you here? And so I told him, I want to learn how to flip properties, but I have no idea what to do. He's like, come into my office next week and I'll show you exactly like how to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I went into his office, and he was putting on a little class, but he drove people around to a couple of his flips right here in OC. And he was saying like, I don't do any out of state stuff. I've been flipping in Orange County for 40 years. So if it is possible. And, he's been killing it for the last 40 years. And so just kind of took off from there.
And that was going to be my next question, actually, is there's so much pressure or maybe influence to invest out of state. And, for me, that's a big leap to invest in pretty much anything, but certainly a flip out of state is kind of fills me with a little bit of anxiety. What was that the driver then, just because of your mentor, you were able to look around California and around where you live? Was that the kind of push for that?
Yeah, I mean, he made it seem easy. He's like, there's deals. Like, there's deals in any city around here. Like, I've been doing it for this long. His son-in-law is also like a crazy flipper. He had like 20 properties all here, like in Southern California, and the spread is like insane. So there, it's like you get maybe you don't get the cash flow, which is what a lot of people are looking for, but that's also a myth too, because I know a ton of people who have rental properties that are cash flowing crazy, but also you get the appreciation. So there's a lot of upside. I think it's just, they say like the tenant laws and all that stuff. There's certain things that people really grab onto that say California can be hard to invest in. I think one of the bigger things is because it's such, there's so much money to be had, it's just really competitive. But then again, I made my first deal within like a couple months of just calling around to realtors and saying, do you have a fixer that I could purchase? And, lo and behold, yeah, one of the agents did and called me back, and then it was a great deal.
That's awesome. So let's move on to that. So moving into, before fix and flips, you started to wholesale, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that looking like? What was that first kind of wholesale deal process? What did that look like?
Yeah, so that was when I was really glad that I had a mentor, because I knew nothing about the process. All she did, she called me and was like, "Hey, I got a property. These people are inheriting it. Their father had it as a rental. He hadn't raised the rents in like 20 years. So there was a family inside that wanted to purchase the property, but they weren't going to be able to qualify. And she kind of already knew that. So she said, I want to get a cash buyer as a backup. So I drove by, took a picture of it, sent it to Joe. I was like, hey, would you want to buy this? And he's like, yeah, sure. This was when the market's like climbing too, and at the end of 2020. And so I goes, okay, well, he's like, all right, well, put in the offer. I was like, all right, well, what, where do I need it? Where do I need to be? And so he's like, okay, if you can get it here, then, I can give you this much. And so basically I said to her, okay, well, yeah, well, let's put in an offer at like, 550. And so that kind of started the process. And she would come back to me and say, hey, well, can you do like 560? And then what about this and this? And so every question that I had to call Joe and be like, hey, she said this. And then he would tell me, all right, well, now go back to her and say this. So it was just like back and forth like that until, I got it all the way through title and escrow, which I had no idea what a title and escrow was, all that stuff. I was like all nervous going to the escrow office, like signing stuff. And it's just kind of funny now because we've done, quite a few deals. But that first one, the whole process can seem crazy until, I always tell people, once you get through that first one, it's like you've seen the process from A to Z. And then now it's just kind of dealing with the other problems that may pop up because we're dealing with sort of distress situations.
So the first question I have is, so you've done a few wholesale deals. How do you find sellers? Mm-hmm. And how do you sell wholesaling, if you do sell wholesaling to them?
Yeah. So now I picture, wholesaling is just one exit strategy. Mm-hmm. So, as you're building your real estate company, you're going to always want to do lead generation. And that's essentially what wholesaling is you're generating leads that you're not going to keep yourself, but you're going to sell to an end buyer. So for us, I tried the cold calling, because I was doing it myself. I tried cold calling for a little bit, didn't really like that. So I switched over to the texting. And so we got a lot of traction with the texting. So that's kind of one avenue that we've stuck to. And basically what you do is you go on to one of the software companies like Property Radar, PropStream, Batch Leads. And basically what they do is they aggregate all the county records of property owners. And then you can go in and you can filter it by properties that may be vacant, people that have a property that they don't currently live in, which is called an absentee owner, people in pre-foreclosure. And so you pull that list, and it could be anywhere from 10 people if you're going to really niche it down to 10,000, and you send out texts. Right now we're sending out anywhere between 500 to 1,000 texts a day. And then as people respond to, have you thought about selling your house? Then you jump on the phone with them and have that conversation and see if you can help them out of the situation that they're in.
Amazing. Is there a typical cost to that? Is it per list, per record?
Yep. Yeah. So you're going to pay for your list, which can be depending on the software that you use. Let's say it's PropStream, for example. You can buy a membership where you can download about 10,000 records a month. And then the more you pay, you can download 20,000 a month, or you can go up to like 250,000 a month. So you'll pull a list of 10,000. So that's like $100 a month. And then you got to skip trace it. And what that is that's you're finding the number associated with the address. So it'll be 123 Main Street. It'll give you the address, John Smith. And then we have to skip trace it to find his number. And so you'll have to pay for that. And then that's a whole that's a whole rabbit hole in itself, because a lot of people have like really cheap price per prospect, like 3 cents, but then the data is not as good. So then you're making, you're kind of just like going up a wall. Or you can pay a lot and get better data. So it just kind of depends what your budget is, but that can be anywhere between like $300 to, like a couple $1,000s. So once you have that, you add that into your texting platform, and then you just kind of send out like a template text and reach out to people.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And then in terms of kind of communicating with them, what does that typically look like?
Yeah, so I kind of have evolved that along the way. So I used to just say, hey, this is Alex. First I would start off with like, is this the owner of 123 Main Street? And then they would be like, yeah. And then I would say, would you consider an offer? So in the beginning, I noticed that was kind of beating around the bush, and I would just be answering a lot of text. One, sort of seeing if that was the owner of the place, and then two, seeing if they would consider an offer. A lot of people would consider an offer if it was 2 times the Zillow price. So now I just kind of come out and say, hey, this is Alex. I'm interested in 123 Main Street. Have you thought about selling? And so I try to get right to the point where they know I'm looking to purchase the property.
And in terms of, so we mentioned briefly earlier, in terms of the seller financing piece, is that when you broached that subject as well, or is that slightly jumping the gun on that process?
So our process, and I've seen this work a lot, is we'll always push for the cash price. So we want to just push the cash price because that's the easiest kind of for people to understand. And then depending on the situation, that may just be for a way for them to get out of the property, especially if it's a headache property, maybe the tenant's not paying, what have you. If for whatever reason they're really stuck on a price and you know that you can't make that work with cash, then I'll bring up, hey, we buy properties a couple different ways. One is the cash offer. For that, we're going to obviously have to be at a discount because what I'm going to do is come in, make the improvements, and then resell it. So I'm going to need a little bit of wiggle room there. You're asking for something that's a little bit higher than that. So what I can do is if I could come up to your price, would you be open to selling on terms? And they're going to say like, well, what is terms? What does that mean? And then you say, well, basically I can come up to your price if you allow me to pay you out over 5, 7, 10 years. So that's
awesome.
Kind of the basic pitch. And then that will go into kind of explaining to them the benefits of seller financing. And one list that we really love where people are mostly open to it is the absentee owner, where they have a property they're not currently living in. They're used to getting that monthly cash flow. And so it's really easy for them to pivot into, oh, I don't have to deal with this tenant anymore. I don't have to deal with the maintenance, but I get the monthly cash flow. Yeah, let me hear about that. And so we've been able to sort of double our contracts and our closed deals by introducing the seller finance, the creative finance side of things.
So now I'm going to be difficult, pivot back to the wholesaling process.
Yeah.
In terms of finding that end buyer, what does that process look like? Is it having a Rolodex or social media presence to find them, or all of the above?
Yeah. Those work. And honestly, we've recently been dispoing. That's what it's called, disposition, selling our own deals. Before I was just JVing with people, so I was doing a lot of stuff out in Florida, and I'm out here in California because I don't have boots on the ground. What I would end up doing is I kind of formed a partnership with people out there. So I would be doing the acquisitions, I'd be locking up the deals, and then I would give it to them where they have the list of local buyers. They're able to go out to the property, take the pictures, walk with the prospective buyers, and then take it through the closing. So I've been JVing a lot with people who focus on dispo, and I would actually encourage a lot of people to do that because both sides, it's really tough to do as a one-man band. So you're going to be focusing on locking up the deal, and then now you have to sell it. Now you're not really bringing in more leads and closing more deals because now you have to focus on selling it. So I would encourage everybody to sort of JV in the beginning, and then now that we've got a regular pipeline and some people in place that can keep the acquisition sides going, we're focusing on dispoing. And we've found that just reaching out on Facebook groups, making posts in some of the bigger groups. If it's a good deal, you'll have no problem finding buyers.
Yeah, and I've heard that again and again. From there's kind of, when you're starting out in real estate, and that's certainly where I am, is you feel like a little bit sticky from wholesaling because they're making a wedge on a deal. But that deal didn't exist, right, before a wholesaler looked at it or touched it, right? So the payday for you is all that work to get you to get that property to a buyable state. So I totally get that. It's kind of interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, the problem with the wholesaling and why a lot of people look down on it is because there's no barrier to entry. It doesn't, anybody can like look people up. There's even free ways to look up people's properties. And what's happening is people aren't taking the time to learn how to analyze a deal properly, to think about, you got to think on both sides. You have a seller, you need to solve their problem. It's yes, it's the price, but it's also, it could be a number of things to get them out of that situation. But you also have to think about the end buyer, the flipper. He or she has to make some money on this deal. And so what's happening is a lot of wholesalers are locking it up way too high, and then they're trying to sell it to an end buyer, and they're expecting the flipper to do all the work, take it down to the studs, do a full rehab, and then make, $10,000 because they want to make $50,000. And I think that just comes from, sort of the YouTube videos where people show that they have like making $50,000 or $100,000 on a deal. Be fine with making like 5 or 10 on a deal, and let the end flipper make that profit margin.
Yeah, and I guess that's going to build those relationships as well, right?
Yeah, totally.
The kind of
because then you won't have a problem selling it. The only time we've had a problem selling a property is because maybe we comped it wrong, and then you kind of go back and you're like, oh yeah, you know what? Like after it's all said and done, after they do those months and months and months of work, they're not going to make that much, or it's just too much of a risk. And it's really opened my eyes now, having done a flip myself, what it takes and the amount of risk you're putting yourself into. So now it's like I'm even better at analyzing the deal and making sure that I have a really fat profit margin in there for the end buyer if I'm going to wholesale it.
Getting the eraser out and checking the numbers.
Yeah.
So what did that first flip look like?
Yeah.
Can you run us through the numbers and then how you procured it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was just doing all the wholesaling, and then finally I found a really killer deal. It was out in Hemet, California, out here, which is it's inland. They have a ton of mobile homes. And so from working in Florida, I had seen that, we were making some pretty good profits wholesaling on mobile homes. So I was like, let me check that out. Let me pull a list out here. And so I locked one up. It was a guy, it was like the perfect situation of a motivated seller. The guy he inherited a property. He had been paying the HOA and all the fees on it. And it was kind of like eating into his bottom line. It was sitting there vacant. It had been broken into a bunch of times, and Christmas was coming up, and he's like, hey, if you can give me like $80,000 for this mobile home, I'll sell it to you right now. And so I kind of ran the numbers, and I was like, okay. The ARV was around like 160 at the time. And so I was like, okay, yeah, this seems like a pretty good deal. So I took it to my mentor, and I was like, hey, you said if I found a really good deal, you'd partner with me on a property so you can actually show me how to flip. And so he's like, I don't do mobile homes. And I was like, okay. And so I told him, I was like, well, wait a second. This mobile home is on the land that you owned. So if you don't know anything about mobile homes, there's the ones where you lease the land. And so it's basically like buying a car or an RV. But there's the other type where you are on your own land, and that sort of makes it like a condo because you get the land and the property. So I ended up going out there. He's like, all right, I'll take a look at it. It was pretty beat up. The owner hadn't been there in over a year, and so I negotiated it back down to around 60 grand because we figured we'd have to put like 50 into it. And so started work on that, and it was pretty scary at first. We didn't know what we were doing. Luckily, we had our mentor who kind of just like, he didn't want to drive back out there, so he's like, I'll just tell you what to do. He's like, I'll put the money in, you guys do the work. And we were like, that's fine. So we kind of teamed up that way. And then I found a really good contractor handyman out there. He'd been working on mobile homes in that park in particular, so he knew everything about mobile homes. And so we got really lucky finding him. He was just like on the ball, showed up when he said he was going to show up, would work extra days if he was a little bit behind. He was like the perfect contractor. And so we ended up putting about 40 grand into that one. So we were all in around, let's say like 105. And by the time we finished, the market was going so crazy that the ARV ended up being like above 200. So we sold it for 220. So we made like 100K on a mobile home.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what time period was that?
That was January 2021. Was that 2022? Yeah, 2022. Yeah, it was at the very end of 2020.
No conferring.
Yeah, it was 2022. So I think we ended up selling it like around like April or something. It was just like right when things were just like peaking.
Amazing. Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So
that's kind of the dream, right? That's the dream first deal.
Exactly. But the only problem is now I'm thinking I'm a genius flipper. So we go to get our next few properties, and then now that takes us into the end of the year, and things start like teetering off. And so now like things are sitting for a while, and then now I'm like sweating and like, oh, okay, yeah, now I see. It takes it's like a little bit harder than I thought it was.
There's that old adage, right? Everyone's a genius when the market's going up. I certainly felt like that over the stock market over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's insane.
This is great.
Yeah. I don't know why they think it's so hard. And then we ended up having to we did a flip out in Joshua Tree where we had to bring out a different contractor, and then that's when we had all the nightmare contractor scenarios that people talk about. So
let's talk about that. What was the property? Was it a house out there or another mobile home?
No, it was a house out there. Joshua Tree was like, I'd say it's like a bubble within a bubble. So everyone was kind of going out there. It's like, it's crazy, like short-term rentals, everyone's buying everything, which was true. And then because of this contractor, it ended up taking way too long, and it was like by the time we finished, it was the beginning of this year, and like everything was just stagnant. So it was just from us having such a great experience with our first contractor. I didn't vet this guy enough. I was just assuming everyone was on the up and up. Everything was good. Yes, these people they just want to do great work. And so there was just a few things. He was working on 2 projects at a time, but he was like, you know what, I'll I can fit you guys in. That's no problem. The second thing was we weren't going out there because it's like, we're in Orange County. Hemet's like Hemet's an hour away. Joshua Tree's like 2 hours away. So what we would do is we had multiple projects going on. So we would go out to Hemet, spend most of our time there, and then we would just kind of stop in at Joshua Tree. Like it's already dark. It's kind of last minute. We would just do a quick walkthrough. And it's just, I think a lot of it was just me and our naivete about the whole process, and then really knowing what to look for. So we had to take it down to the studs. And so we're running like new AC ducting and gas lines and all that stuff. And I didn't know enough at the time. Now I do because of this project, but he was just like, it was like really shoddy work. So we ended up almost having to flip this property twice, because as he was wrapping up, we had our other contractors from Hemet come out, and they were like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is like, this is wrong. This is done all wrong. Yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so he's like pointing it all out to me. And so we basically had to have that original team come out, took those guys off, and then have them like refinish it. So
I was going to say it's tough because we have a place up in Big Bear. That's our short-term rental. Same thing, right? A bit of a bubble market, not quite as crazy as Joshua Tree. But because of that, there's so much need for contractors that they just couldn't cope with demand. So even if they're taking on a couple of jobs, there's just so much kind of there's only so much they can do in a day, right? And trying to juggle projects becomes difficult. But equally, they don't want to say no.
They don't want to say no. Plus, I'm sure it's the same thing. Like Joshua Tree has desert time. I'm sure Big Bear has mountain time, where it's like It's almost like Island Time, where there's no urgency whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you're like looking at you're like, wait, 4 months have already gone by, and we're like barely at a point where this makes sense. So yeah, but I needed that for sure to bring me into this new year. So now it's like my whole theme is just like vetting people, making sure that like their work is quality and all that stuff.
So did you flip that one? What was the exit strategy?
Yeah, we flipped it. We just sold it, so it had been sitting on the market for like 100 and something days. So basically,
Wow.
The bubble popped in Joshua Tree. I had a couple friends too, same sort of thing, and they were like really experienced flippers, but they had bought a couple properties out there, and they turned out beautiful. It was just sitting, and then it for some reason. I think it's because it's so far out and it's away from the metro. It like has its own scene. And so the prices have just really come down.
We were looking at, I've been tracking Joshua Tree for a while because for that reason, we were looking for our next short-term rental and thinking about Joshua Tree. And the trend down has been like, wow, this is crazy. Things sat there that were super ignited, and now it's slowing down a little bit. I've got a vision of what I want in Joshua Tree.
Okay.
And I need to figure out what that is, and how to get it. But
yeah, and
super
now I'm
interesting.
like, exactly, and like I do, because we've really like focused on there and tried to like crack that nut outside of the hype. There are people out there killing it. It just takes like a certain type of property, especially now. It's not just you're going to have, put your room up there and be killing it, which a lot of people were doing. They just had a regular house and they just threw it up there. And because the hype was so crazy, they were killing it. But now I'm actually getting a lot of sellers reaching out saying, we bought a property in 2021. We put like 150,000 into it. It's not performing like we thought. And so they're open to sort of a subto seller finance deal. So just to try and get their money out. And I'm just like,
interesting.
I'm saying this is pretty much the only way you're going to be able to get your cash on cash return into where all your it'll make sense on paper. It'll just take a little while to get it back. Yeah,
we're certainly seeing slowdown in Big Bear. We bought probably at the lower end of the market. We're in a condo. We're at the base of the mountain.
Oh, nice.
So we have good mountain bike traffic and good ski traffic, and so it means that when we get to a price competition, we're pretty well established to be able to kind of take that on, which is kind of interesting to ride out the next few years.
Yeah, exactly.
My one tip, if anyone's listening thinking of buying a short-term rental, make sure you can afford the mortgage without anyone staying at your place, because that will happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one rule of thumb, right?
Yeah,
easier said than done.
Sure, I know. Or maybe it can work as a long-term rental, but it's like it can't.
That's the other one. What's the delta?
Yeah, exactly, because it can't just work as only a short-term rental. I think a lot of people found that out like this last 6 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in terms of what does your portfolio look like today?
So we have a couple wraps. Like we had a few seller finance deals that we got. Like I said, we love mobile homes, so we bought some mobile homes on seller finance, and we have some long-term rentals. And then a couple of them we turned just into a wrap, meaning we had a seller finance deal, and then what we did was we created a second note and sold it on seller finance, just to sort of not have to worry about the maintenance, but also like have that cash flow.
Can you talk me through that? What does that look like? Break. Assume I'm an idiot and break it down.
No. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's a really cool thing, and we're looking into it way more because we're getting so much people that are open to seller finance deals. So what you do is on this particular one, we bought it for I think just under 200 or around 200. It came with tenants, and so we were cash flowing probably like $400, maybe $500. And so they were about to, I think, be done with their lease, and they had just trashed the place. So we didn't want to put the money into having to fix it up and then re-rent it. So what we decided to do was wrap it, meaning we had a seller finance deal. I have a mortgage with a private seller. And so we put it on the market as offering seller finance. And so we put it at 250 seller finance, and with I think it was like 40 grand down or something. And so we got the down payment, so that's kind of some upfront cash, and then we create a second note. So we have the first note, and then we create the second note for the 50 grand. And so the seller is basically paying both notes. She's paying the first note, which originally we were paying, and then also just paying us a note somewhere around like $300. So it's a little bit of less cash flow, but it's less headache as far as we don't have to worry about the maintenance. We don't have to worry about the tenants or anything like that. So it's a pretty cool exit strategy.
That's really interesting. I've been doing a lot of reading on lease to own, and there's kind of an overlay there or similarity. Exactly. So that's super interesting.
I think just the difference is maybe the lease to own is like you have the possibility of owning the property again, which is amazing. A little bit, maybe less of a down payment with the lease to own. And then the wrap is you can get a fatter down payment up front, but you're giving up all your equity and appreciation and stuff because
and those lease payments. But I kind of like that. My view on lease to own, I want to do it because I want to contribute to community. I want to make money, but I want to contribute to communities. Certainly here in California. So I quite like that. I'm going to look at that.
Yeah,
that's super exciting. And then in terms of like financing these deals, so you say you did a few subject to, right? Have you used like private money at all, or hard money, or all of the above?
No, I haven't used hard money at all. We're just starting to look into it. Obviously, right now it doesn't make too much sense. But I've built up those relationships with people to where I have private money that I can kind of tap into. It just depends on each deal. So that's the only thing I guess holding us back right now of taking more deals on is like I'm presenting the deal to people that have been in the game a little bit longer than me. So it's nice to have those extra set of eyes. And then if the deal makes sense, they're just like, okay, let's do it. Go ahead. And then we're pretty much splitting it like 50-50 right now on the flips.
That's awesome. So are you always looking for investors?
Yeah. Always looking for investors, always looking to team up. We love JVing. Since we've dove into the creative finance stuff, you realize you can partner with people in such creative ways as well that it just makes the whole thing really fun. It makes it a team sport. And we're always looking to team up with people.
I think that one of the fascinating things about real estate and about seller financing in particular is it's almost like this underground community, but also way of transacting. And I really like that. It's kind of like a thumb at the banks to say, you go do whatever you do. We're doing this. I quite like it.
Yeah, exactly. And us coming from a, sort of a independent contractor band background, it's like I thought we'd never be able to own property because we weren't, on paper, like fundable, I guess. And then once I found this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like you can just work it out with the seller, and it's just like a straight transaction. A lot of these sellers I've become friends with, and then now they're like partnering with me on different deals. And so it just opens up a whole, like you said, like an underground sort of community that's really tight knit.
Cutting the bureaucracy. I like it. So one of the other question I had in my notes, and noting your Instagram page, and as I said, it's very real and quite exciting to kind of view your content, and the realness of it is really shines through. And I guess that's knowing how to put together a video. So it's you and your missus, right?
Yep.
How does it work? With investing with your spouse? Is there kind of conflict there, or is it pure harmony all the time? How does that work?
Yeah, no, we make a good team. I mean, we've worked together pretty much since we've been together because we met by being in the band essentially, or we met originally. I was a producer and then she came in as an artist. So we've had a working relationship the whole time. The real estate thing, I kind of took the reins on that as far as wholesaling. She has like a steady job, which has been amazing during the ups and downs of the wholesaling and stuff. So I kind of took the reins on that, learned, the ins and outs, and then she joined in at the perfect time, watching from the sidelines a little bit. And then as we started flipping with the design, she has such a creative eye. And then she has really good instincts as well. So there's been a ton of deals where I've been like, we got to take this one. Like, this is the one that's going to make us like millions. And then she'll be like, no, because this, and this. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And just bring me back down to reality. So we make a really good team balancing out. And then she's, like I said, amazing at design. So the flips, I really enjoy the hunting the deal, taking it down, and, you know, kind of getting the next one ready to go. And then she's amazing at like working with the contractors and really bringing our vision to life.
A lot of that sounds familiar. I'm very much like high level vision, and my wife is the converter into actually what does that really mean in the real world kind of stuff, which is kind of funny.
Because we'll go crazy. It's like you watch one video and you're like, I'm gonna get like 150 unit apartment complex, and they're like, well, slow down, like why don't you just get the next deal first, you know?
I like that. And what does that vision look like for you? Like, what is next?
Yeah, so we're looking into mobile home parks. That's like really high up on our list. First, we just love mobile homes. And so that's sort of like the commercial version of that. And we think it'd be great to just kind of like own the land and then, you know, have the cash flow from the space rent. We want to we like the idea of the land hacking, where you get like a big piece of land and then you can have multiple streams of income, whether that be like a wedding venue plus like some cottages or something like that. We're looking at doing something on Hawaii because we love Hawaii, so we'd love to get something out there.
Same.
Yeah, so that's kind of like our big vision, is if we can combine all those together and then do it on Hawaii is like kind of the end game.
Can I tell you, I have a 2.5-year-old, and she was having an absolute meltdown the other day, and I went over to her and said, hey honey, what's the matter? And she just stopped crying and just went, I want to go to Hawaii. It's
exactly.
the cutest thing
she gets it, man,
you've ever heard. And I'm like, you're right. Yeah, we should be going to Hawaii. Why aren't we going to Hawaii?
Yeah, I feel like that for sure.
Yeah,
so cool.
So I jumped on the floor and had a scream as well alongside her.
Exactly.
Rock on.
If you've ever been, then you know the feeling, because when you have to leave, it's like that's exactly
it's hard.
like that's what the feeling is. Yeah.
No, I really like that multi-use, that you know, for short-term rentals, and then building a business off the back of that. That's such a killer concept, is adding value, and that's kind of funnily enough, kind of one of the concepts I've been thinking about in Joshua Tree. Not quite a wedding venue, but something a little bit more.
Nice.
I think mine's I love the idea of owning like a classic American hotel.
Yeah,
not like a seedy motel.
Right.
Something pretty good, like boutique-y kind of thing.
I think like in that Joshua Tree can really use that. I've seen some of the hotels out there. I think a few of them have done that, but there's still those sketchy ones. And so it could really, I think, use one of those.
No, I like that a lot. So in terms of people getting in touch with you, what does that look like? How can people reach out to you?
Yep. So they can hit me up on Instagram at Alex Barnett Real Estate. Or if you want to email me directly, alex@trustinghouse.com. But I have a link on there for my Calendly, so you can just, book some time with me. And then, let's link up. Let's do some deals. I'm always buying and selling it right now. So.
And check out Alex's podcast as well. Feel free to plug it, Alex.
Yeah. So I have 2 podcasts right now. One is called My First Deal, and we do a deep dive into investors' first deals, because that first deal can seem like it's a million miles away when it's usually just right around the corner. And so the reason we started that one is because now we're at the point to where people are kind of, if they've been thinking about getting into real estate, they'll hit us up and we'll kind of get them started. And then I'll hear from them, might be 2 months, 3 months later, and they're like, I still haven't got my first deal. Like, is this normal? And so we brought people on so you can hear everybody's origin story, because it's sometimes it's similar, but a lot of times it's different as far as, getting that first one under your belt. So that's what I'm kind of showcasing on that. And then I have another one called The New and Experienced Investor. And so that's just me and my mentor. And so we have guests on there, and then we're just kind of talking about market updates, advice, and all that kind of stuff.
Love it. Yeah, check those out. We'll put some links into the show notes, and we'll share out this onto your network as well, Alex.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we gotta do some deals, man. Sounds like we're kind of in the same space. So
yeah,
let's figure out.
I'm gonna
come
up and buy you a coffee. I've decided.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good, man.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
It was great to chat. We need to get you back on because there's so many other things I want to talk about.
Sure.
Especially around kind of multi-use. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Alex, thanks, and we'll be back next week.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Investories podcast. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories podcast.